She didn't react when the hotshot pilot called her sweetheart, didn't flinch when he asked if she was lost, just kept sipping her drink while he performed for his squadron, boasting about his 200 flight hours and simulator kills. Then he made his mistake. He leaned in close, smirking, and asked the question that silenced the entire officers' club. "So what do you do, beautiful? Let me guess, you're someone's wife?" The woman finally looked at him. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "I'm Colonel Sarah Wraith Bennett. I have 2,000 combat hours over denied airspace, 47 confirmed kills, and I wrote the stealth penetration doctrine you studied in flight school." The color drained from his face, because every pilot in that room knew the name Wraith. They just never knew she'd walk through the door. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we begin this story of silent excellence and shattered assumptions, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you believe true warriors often hide in plain sight, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who earned their respect the hard way. The Viper's Nest at Edwards Air Force Base carried its reputation like a badge of honor. Friday nights brought the best fighter pilots in the United States Air Force together, a place where egos were as carefully polished as the aircraft they flew. The bar hummed with testosterone and jet fuel confidence, walls decorated with squadron patches and photographs of aircraft that pushed the boundaries of what physics allowed. Captain Ryan "Hawk" Morrison stood at the center of his group, 28 years old, with the kind of movie star looks that had graced recruitment posters. Tall, broad-shouldered, with perfectly styled dark hair and a jaw that could cut glass. His flight suit fit like it had been tailored, every zipper and patch positioned for maximum effect. He'd graduated top of his class at the Air Force Academy, finished flight training with scores that made instructors remember his name. "So, there I am," Hawk's voice carried across the bar. "8 bandits on radar, RWR screaming at me like my ex-wife." His squadron laughed on cue. "Towers calling for RTB, but I'm locked in. Pull a vertical extension that would make Jaeger jealous. Splash 3 before they even know what hit them." Lieutenant Marcus Blade Chen raised his beer. "That was a simulator run, Hawk." "Details," Hawk grinned. "Point is, when you've got the skills, you've got the kills." Colonel David Gunner Walsh watched from his corner booth, 30 years of flying fighters etched into the lines around his eyes. Beside him sat Major Rebecca Venom Torres, whose quiet presence commanded more respect than Hawk's entire performance. They'd both flown combat missions that would never appear in any official record. "Another one," Venom said quietly, nodding toward Hawk. "Every generation has them," Gunner replied. "The question is whether they learn before it matters." The front door opened, admitting a woman who moved through the crowded bar with understated confidence. She was stunning in a way that made conversation pause. Blonde hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, blue eyes that seemed to catalog everything without effort. Her figure was athletic and curved in all the right places, the kind of beauty that didn't need announcement. She wore civilian clothes, dark jeans, a fitted black leather jacket, boots that had seen actual use. Nothing about her screamed military, yet Gunner noticed how she scanned the room with practiced awareness before selecting a table near the back. The way she moved suggested someone comfortable in her own skin, someone who'd earned that confidence through something more than looks. She ordered vodka neat from the waitress and settled into quiet observation. Hawk noticed her 3 seconds later. His entire posture shifted, shoulders back, chin up, the automatic response of a predator spotting prey. "Gentlemen," he announced to his group, "target acquired." "Hawk, don't," Blade warned. "You don't know who she is." "I know she's about to meet the best pilot in the Air Force," Hawk replied, already moving. He approached her table with the swagger of someone who'd never been told no, not really. His smile was calculated confidence, his body language open and dominant. "You look lost," he said, voice smooth and practiced. "This is where Air Force pilots hang out. Real pilots. The ones who fly the fastest jets in the world." The woman glanced up briefly, then returned her attention to her vodka. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes suggested she was making calculations. "I just got back from a combat deployment," Hawk continued, undeterred by her silence. "F-35 Lightning II, 5th generation fighter. You probably don't know what that means, but basically, I fly jets that are invisible to enemy radar." Still no response. The woman simply sipped her drink with the same calm efficiency she'd displayed since entering. "Strong, silent type," Hawk said, pulling out the chair across from her without invitation. "I like that. Makes things interesting." From the corner booth, Venom shook her head. "He has no idea." "Should we stop him?" Gunner asked. "And rob him of a learning experience? Where's the fun in that?" Hawk leaned forward, elbows on the table. "So, what brings a gorgeous woman like you to a place like this? Looking to meet a real aviator? Because I can definitely help with that." The woman sat down her glass with precise control. I'm just here for a drink. Come on, Hawk pressed. Everyone's here for something. Me? I'm here celebrating another successful mission. Can't talk about the details. Classified. But let's just say the enemy never saw us coming. Impressive, she said, her tone completely flat. Hawk missed the sarcasm entirely. Right? 200 flight hours under my belt already. By the time I'm 30, I'll have more stick time than most pilots get in their entire career. 200 hours, she repeated slowly. Yeah, I know it sounds like a lot, but when you're as good as I am, the hours add up fast. Behind him, several veteran pilots had stopped their conversations. A few were staring openly now, faces frozen in expressions somewhere between disbelief and anticipation. You ever flown? Hawk asked. Not like commercial flights. I mean really flown. Felt the G-forces pressing you into your seat? Pushed an aircraft to its absolute limits? Once or twice, the woman replied. I bet. Hawk's grin widened. Flight simulator at some arcade, right? It's not the same thing, trust me. Real flying takes a special kind of person. The reflexes, the spatial awareness, the ability to make split-second decisions when lives are on the line. Sounds challenging, she said. It is, but that's what separates us from everyone else. He gestured broadly to the bar. Everyone in this room? We're the best of the best. Top 1% of pilots in the world. The woman's eyes flickered toward the corner booth where Gunner and Venom sat. Something passed between them, a brief recognition that Hawk completely missed. So, Hawk said, leaning back in his chair with practiced casualness. What do you do, beautiful? Let me guess, you're someone's wife, girlfriend? Here to pick up your man after a long day of saving the world? The question hung in the air like a live grenade. Every veteran pilot in the room went completely still. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the bartender paused in pouring drinks. The woman studied Hawk for a long moment, blue eyes calm and assessing. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the sudden silence. I'm Colonel Sarah Bennett. My call sign is Wraith. I have 2,000 combat hours over denied airspace, 47 confirmed kills in air-to-air combat, and I wrote the stealth penetration doctrine that's currently taught at every fighter weapons school in the United States Air Force. The color drained from Hawk's face so fast, it looked medically concerning. I've flown missions over Pakistan that will be classified for the next 50 years, she continued in the same quiet, almost gentle tone. I've penetrated integrated air defense systems that were supposed to be impenetrable. I've engaged enemy fighters at night over hostile territory, where radar coverage meant instant death. Hawk's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The F-35 you fly? Wraith tilted her head slightly. I was on the test pilot team that validated its combat systems. The stealth characteristics you think make you invisible? I helped design the operational procedures that make them actually work. Around the bar, pilots were standing now, not moving closer, but rising from their seats with expressions of recognition and respect. 200 flight hours is a good start, Wraith said. I had that many before I graduated from basic fighter training. By the time I was your age, I'd already flown combat missions in 3 different countries and earned my first air-to-air kill. Gunner Walsh rose from his corner booth and walked toward the table. His movement drew every eye in the room. Colonel Bennett, he said formally, stopping at regulation distance. We didn't know you were stateside. Just passing through, Gunner, she replied, her demeanor warming slightly. Thought I'd stop in for old time's sake. The old crowd would love to see you, Gunner said. Half of them are here tonight. As if on cue, other officers began approaching, not crowding, but forming a respectful perimeter. These were the quiet ones, the veterans who'd been watching Hawk's performance with knowing smiles. Now their faces showed something different, professional recognition of someone who'd earned their respect through demonstrated excellence. Hawk remained frozen in his chair, face cycling through shades of red and white. Captain Morrison, Gunner said, his tone carrying the weight of command. I believe you've just had the privilege of meeting the finest combat pilot of our generation. I didn't, Hawk stammered. You didn't know, Wraith finished for him. Most people don't. That's by design. Major Venom Torres stepped forward. Colonel Bennett, it's an honor. Your Pakistan operation briefing changed how we approach high-altitude interdiction. The credit goes to the team, Wraith replied. I just flew the aircraft. For 18 hours straight, Venom added, looking at Hawk. Through weather that grounded every other aircraft in theater. Through air defenses that shouldn't have been survivable. To extract an intelligence asset that changed the course of the entire war. Hawk finally found his voice. Colonel, I apologize. I had no idea. I thought You thought I was just another pretty face in a pilot bar, Wraith said, not unkindly. It's a reasonable assumption. I wasn't wearing a uniform. I didn't announce my credentials. You acted on the information available to you. That doesn't excuse my behavior, Hawk said, standing now. I was disrespectful, unprofessional. You were confident, Wraith corrected. There's nothing wrong with confidence, Captain. Fighter pilots need it. The question is whether your confidence comes from demonstrated capability or assumed superiority. The words landed like precision strikes. Hawk's face showed he understood the distinction. The call sign Wraith, Lieutenant Chen said quietly, having approached with the rest of Hawk's squadron. We studied your tactics at Red Flag, the vertical insertion technique through radar coverage. They told us it was theoretical. Everything's theoretical until someone proves it works, Wraith replied. I had good aircraft and better intel support. The technique works because it exploits a fundamental assumption in integrated air defense systems. That aircraft maintain predictable flight patterns, Chen said, recognition dawning. You used terrain masking with a vertical approach vector that put you inside the radar's minimum elevation angle. Exactly, Wraith confirmed. The system couldn't see me because it was looking for threats that behaved like normal aircraft. Sometimes the best stealth is just doing what everyone assumes is impossible. Gunner placed a hand on Hawk's shoulder. Captain, there's a lesson here that's worth more than any simulator training. Care to tell me what it is? Hawk took a breath, visibly collecting himself. Never make assumptions about someone based on how they look. Judge them by their actions, their record, their demonstrated capability. Close, Wraith said. But there's something more important. Never stop learning. I've been flying for 15 years, and I still learn something new every mission. The moment you think you know everything is the moment you become dangerous to yourself and your wingmen. She stood, picking up her leather jacket from the chair. 200 flight hours is impressive, Captain, she said, extending her hand. You've accomplished something most people never will. Build on it. Learn from it. But remember that hours in the aircraft are just the beginning. Experience comes from missions that test you, from mistakes that teach you, from moments when everything goes wrong and you have to make it right. Hawk shook her hand, his grip firm but no longer cocky. Colonel, would you be willing to share some of that experience? I have a feeling I have a lot to learn. That depends, Wraith said. Are you willing to listen more than you talk? Yes, ma'am. Then we might have something to work with. She looked at Gunner. You still running those advanced tactics seminars? Every month, Gunner confirmed. I could use a guest instructor who actually flew the missions we're trying to teach. Send me the schedule, Wraith said. Then to Hawk, show up early, stay late, and check your ego at the door. The tactics we discuss are classified, and the learning curve is steep. I'll be there, Colonel, Hawk promised. Wraith nodded once, then turned to address the room. It's good to see everyone. The Air Force is in excellent hands if tonight's any indication. Young pilots with confidence and veteran instructors with wisdom to share. That combination wins war. As she moved toward the door, the room naturally parted. Several pilots nodded respectfully as she passed. A few younger officers stared with open admiration, finally seeing past the civilian clothes to the warrior underneath. Major Torres caught up with her near the exit. Sarah, before you go, the Pentagon briefing next month. Are you presenting? If they want the truth about operational realities versus budget projections, yes, Wraith replied. Someone needs to explain why stealth technology only works when it's supported by proper tactics and trained pilots. The contractors aren't going to like that analysis. The contractors can build me a better aircraft if they disagree, Wraith said with a slight smile. Until then, I'll keep flying what we have and proving what's actually possible versus what looks good in PowerPoint presentation. After she left, the bar slowly returned to normal volume, but the atmosphere had changed. Conversations were quieter, more thoughtful. Hawk returned to his table where his squadron waited with expressions ranging from sympathy to amusement. Well, Blade said finally, that was educational. I'm an idiot, Hawk muttered, dropping into his chair. You're a pilot who learned something important, Blade corrected. That makes you slightly less of an idiot than you were an hour ago. Gunner Walsh approached their table, pulling up a chair without invitation. The colonel's presence commanded immediate attention. Captain Morrison, he began, his tone more mentor than commander. What happened tonight is going to follow you for a while. Every pilot in this room is going to remember the hotshot who tried to pick up Colonel Bennett without knowing who she was. Hawk closed his eyes. I understand, sir. But, Gunner continued, they're also going to remember what happened next, how you handled being corrected, whether you learned from it or let your ego make it worse. I want to learn, sir. Good, because Colonel Bennett doesn't offer training opportunities to just anyone. The fact that she's willing to teach you means she saw something worth developing. developing. Don't waste that opportunity. Lieutenant Chen leaned forward. Sir, is it true about the Pakistan operation? 18 hours in hostile airspace? It's true, Gunner confirmed. Though the actual mission was even more complex than the briefing suggests. She penetrated air defenses that had shot down 3 unmanned reconnaissance drones in the previous month, flew at altitudes that shouldn't have been survivable for that duration, maintained radio silence while coordinating with ground teams using techniques that are still classified. How's that even possible? Another pilot asked. Training, preparation, and the kind of mental toughness that can't be taught, Gunner replied. Colonel Bennett has flown missions that would break most pilots psychologically. She's been shot at by systems that had 90% kill rates against conventional aircraft. She's performed emergency combat landings that should have resulted in complete loss of airframe. And she walks into a bar like she's just another civilian, Hawk said quietly. That's the point, Gunner said. Real capability doesn't need announcement. The pilots who talk the loudest are usually the ones with the most to prove and the least to show for it. The words hit Hawk like a physical blow. He'd been that pilot. Still was, in some ways. How do I change that, sir? He asked. You already started, Gunner replied. You apologized sincerely, you acknowledged your mistake, and you asked to learn. That's more than most hotshots ever do. Over the following weeks, Hawk's attitude shifted noticeably. He showed up early to briefings and stayed late asking questions. He listened more than he talked. When Colonel Bennett's tactics seminar began, he was there 30 minutes before start time with a notebook and zero swagger. The seminar took place in a classified briefing room at Edwards. 12 pilots selected for advanced training, all with significant experience, but willing to acknowledge how much they didn't know. Colonel Bennett entered in uniform this time, service dress that displayed ribbons and qualifications most pilots never earned. The Silver Star, Distinguished Flying Cross with 3 oak leaf clusters, Air Medal with 14 oak leaf clusters. The uniform told a story that words couldn't capture. Good morning, she began, her tone professional and direct. This seminar covers tactical employment of stealth aircraft in contested environments. Everything discussed here is classified. Nothing leaves this room. She activated the display screen, showing radar signatures and threat envelopes that made several pilots lean forward in sudden interest. Let's start with a question, Wraith continued. Who can tell me the single biggest threat to stealth aircraft in modern warfare? Hands went up. She pointed to a major from the 389th Fighter Squadron. Integrated air defense systems with overlapping coverage, ma'am. Wrong, Wraith said flatly. Next, another pilot tried. Low-frequency radar that can detect stealth characteristics. Getting warmer, but still wrong. Hawk raised his hand hesitantly. Wraith nodded to him. Pilot complacency, he offered. Assuming stealth means invulnerability? Wraith smiled slightly. Now we're talking. The biggest threat to any stealth aircraft is the pilot who thinks the technology makes them untouchable. Stealth reduces detection range. It doesn't make you invisible. She pulled up footage from an actual mission. Radar displays showing how stealth aircraft signatures appeared and disappeared based on aspect angles and employment tactics. I've been locked up by enemy radar more times than I can count, Wraith said. I've had missiles launched at me. I've been forced to evade threats while maintaining mission profile. Stealth bought me time and options, but it didn't make me invincible. The seminar continued for 6 hours, breaking only for lunch. Wraith covered scenarios that most pilots never encountered, tactics that existed only in classified operational procedures, and decision-making processes that separated successful missions from catastrophic failures. Sir, question, Hawk said during one section. You mentioned the Pakistan operation earlier. Can you talk about the decision-making process when your primary navigation system failed? Good question, Wraith replied. The answer demonstrates why we train backup procedures until they become instinct. When my primary Navi system went offline, I had 8 seconds to switch to backup methods before I flew into a radar coverage zone that would have ended the mission. What was the backup? Someone asked. Terrain mapping from memory, Wraith said. I'd studied the approach corridor for 2 weeks before the mission. Every ridgeline, every valley, every feature that could provide masking. When the system failed, I flew the same profile using visual references and timing. At night, Gunner added from the back of the room. In weather that reduced visibility to less than a mile. The implication hung heavy. What Wraith described casually was nearly impossible flying that required absolute mastery of aircraft and environment. During the lunch break, Hawk approached her carefully. Colonel, can I ask you something? Go ahead, Captain. That night at the bar, you could have identified yourself immediately. Ended my approach before I embarrassed myself. Why didn't you? Wraith considered the question while pouring coffee. 2 reasons. First, in combat, enemies underestimate you all the time. Learning to use that to your advantage is a survival skill. Second, I wanted to see how you'd respond when corrected. That tells me more about a pilot's character than any flight evaluation. And? Hawk asked. And you passed, she said simply. You admitted your mistake, apologized apologize genuinely, and ask to learn. Those 3 things separate pilots who survive long careers from pilots who wash out or get people killed. I still feel like an idiot. Good. That feeling will keep you humble, and humility will keep you alive. She handed him a coffee. The mission I flew over Pakistan? I made 3 tactical errors during execution. 3 mistakes that could have ended everything. I survived because I recognized them quickly, adapted, and learned from them. You still made mistakes? Hawk said, surprised. Captain, I make mistakes every flight. The difference between experienced pilots and new pilots isn't whether you make mistakes. It's how quickly you recognize and correct them. The seminar's final session covered something unexpected: the psychological challenges of combat flying. Wraith spoke candidly about stress, fear, and the mental discipline required to maintain performance when everything was going wrong. I've been terrified in the cockpit, she said to a room of pilots who'd been taught that fear was weakness. I've had moments where every instinct screamed at me to abort, to turn around, to get out of the kill zone. The fear doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. The question is what you do with it. She pulled up statistics showing that psychological factors caused more mission failures than mechanical or tactical issues. The pilots who succeed learn to acknowledge fear, process it, and continue executing the mission. The pilots who fail either deny the fear until it overwhelms them or let it control their decision-making. After the seminar ended, Hawk found himself back at the Viper's Nest. But this time, he sat with the quiet veterans instead of holding court. Colonel Bennett was there too, at the same corner table where they'd first met. This time, Hawk approached with respect instead of swagger. Colonel, thank you for the training opportunity. I learned more this week than in my entire flight career. You're welcome, Captain. Your progress has been impressive. I have a long way to go. We all do, Wraith replied. That's what makes this profession interesting. The learning never stops. She gestured to the empty chair. Hawk sat, no longer trying to dominate the space, but simply present and attentive. Can I ask you something else? He said. Why do you keep flying? With your experience and rank, you could take a staff position, teach full-time, retire comfortably. Why keep putting yourself in harm's way? Wraith smiled, a genuine expression that made her even more beautiful. Because someone has to. Because the missions don't fly themselves. Because I remember what it was like to be a young pilot wondering if I had what it took. And the best way I can honor that memory is by continuing to demonstrate what's possible. She finished her vodka and stood. Captain Morrison, you're going to be a good pilot, maybe even a great one, but that will depend on whether you remember tonight. Whether you remember that confidence without competence is dangerous, that assumptions without evidence are foolish, and that true excellence doesn't need to announce itself. I'll remember, Colonel. Good, because someday you're going to be the experienced pilot in the room, and some hotshot is going to need the same lesson you learned tonight. Make sure you're ready to teach it. As Wraith left the bar for the second time, Hawk watched her go with newfound understanding. She moved through the crowd with the same understated confidence as before, but now he saw it for what it was. The calm certainty of someone who'd proven themselves 1,000 times over and had nothing left to prove. Have you ever met someone who changed your entire worldview with just a few words? Someone whose quiet excellence challenged everything you thought you knew about capability and respect? Share their story in the comments below. At Secrets Never Told, we believe the most powerful lessons often come from the most unexpected teachers.